And we're live.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of Building Your Wellness Brand Within Your Community. I'm Dr. Alan Weinstein, and I'm with my co-host, Dr. Randi Ross. We have a special guest I'll introduce you in a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by, Epic. You skip a couple of weeks is what happens. Epic Consulting, making sure your electronic presence is all it needs to be. Community Wellness Day. Every great opportunity begins with the first step. Take that step with Community Wellness Day. The System, the official marketing program of healthcare practitioners everywhere. And the VIP app, the only application that allows you to bring your live hangouts. Getting an echo here somehow.
I know, that's me.
Okay, no problem. To the desktop, iPhone, iPad, and Samsungs of those people that are following you. I want to introduce today's program. It's called Community Health Program Interview with Frank Sardella. Some things they didn't teach you in school. This is probably going to be a long show based on that title. Let me tell you a little something about Frank, though, and then we'll jump right into it. After having recovered from intense illness through the power of chiropractic, Frank Sardella opted to make a career move to help others achieve and control their wellness. In becoming a dynamic advocate of the chiropractic profession, Frank's first efforts were to refer others landed him into tenure as marketing director with one of the largest chains of chiropractic practices in the U.S. Since then, Frank has referred thousands of people to chiropractors who have, in turn, also become successful patients. Answering increased demand for corporate patients, he also pioneered one of New York's first corporate health and wellness event companies, contributing to their popularity today. Often asked, why not become a chiropractor, Frank responds, there are plenty of chiropractors to get the job done, but too few who know how to create volumes of patients. That is the need I decided to fulfill. Today, Frank is coach to practice owners, associates, and marketing assistants internationally, and is the host of Will Work for Patients, a podcast dedicated to giving advice and inspiration to chiropractors and their staffs to help foster individual practice growth, to forward the profession itself. And one other thing that we'll probably mention is he's also founder of the Screening Expert System, and you'll be able to go to screeningexperts.com when the show's over and actually download that book. His number, if you want to get in touch with him, which we will repeat, is 845-219-1101. Dr. Randi, let me turn it over to you.
All right, Dr. Allen, you did a good job as always. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another week of our Hangouts, and we hope that today you will have a takeaway that gives you something to think about and some tools so you can turn around and implement something within your business and continue to have success. I'm gonna introduce Frank, which Dr. Allen has already done a great job of, so we're not going to really introduce him, but we're going to bring him on, and we're going to hold your feet to the fire a little bit, Frank, because that's what we do around here, sir. So just why don't we welcome you, everyone. Welcome Frank Sardella. Hi, Frank. How you doing? Thank you for being here today.
I'm doing great, Doc. Thank you both for that. I hope I can live up to that introduction. That was quite extensive. And, yeah, so thanks. Very good to be here.
All right. Well, here's the first question we always throw at all of our guests, and it really is, we want to know, what gives you the right to be considered an authority on business development?
Oh my, you get right into it, don't you?
No messing around here.
That's totally fine. Honestly, I think it was really in the introduction that Dr. Allen gave, and that's really that the right of anyone who's received that much of a miracle from a chiropractor is to go out and tell everyone and try to help others. One of the things I discovered in my travels, not only as a patient, but as a marketer, and only, let's say, recently have realized that that's really the most powerful thing that there is, and the highest level lifetime chiropractic patient. Because what I found is that the highest level patient you can have, someone you would call a lifetime patient, is not just somebody who lives a wellness lifestyle, but somebody who desires to help others achieve a wellness lifestyle as well. And I just happen to make that a career move and do everything that I can to learn everything I can about getting others convinced to do the same.
And you know, you and I have had a number of conversations probably over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. And we, you know, your area or one of your areas of expertise now really lies within the screening process. And we all know how effective that is. It's an incredible way to touch a lot of people in a short period of time. It's
Yeah.
obviously an integral part in what we do with Community Wellness Day, because we say you're hosting the largest screening that you would ever get an opportunity to create in your community. And we've also talked a lot about, you know, how important relationships are to building your business, and even the aspect of having relationships to get in the door of some of these places where you want to do screening. So talk to a little bit about you know, how important having relationships is within your community when you're a local business entity like a chiropractor, how important that is for you to really build your awareness and your presence and ultimately your business.
That's a great question, Doc. You know, I have a lot of passion about this subject, particularly because one of the things that I discovered in my travels of doing face-to-face screenings, literally thousands of times over, is that you have to have a place to screen in the first place. So you have to be able to interact with people in your community so that you can go out and do things without having to spend thousands of dollars, right? But if you're to expect from members of your community to allow you to come and enlighten their members, their employees, their customers, their clients, what have you, um, you know, there has to be some degree of reciprocity, and that's a big word in the coaching that I deliver. I found that reciprocity is one of the biggest missing ingredients in this area, surprisingly, because there's so much help for us to offer, and we're in this profession, you know, very uniquely. We're all so inclined to just reach out and want to help and whatever. But I sort of found that there's a little bit of a degree after a while of sort of, God, I hesitate to use the term because I don't want to be too harsh, but sort of sponging off of, you know, community businesses and such. A good example would be, you know, doing a screening with a local health club. You have your own problems in practice, and you know, we all know retention is, you know, been a past issue and whatever, and that, you know, to make up for it, we have to promote out the front door and talk to people. But you know, you have to realize that the other members of your community as well have their issues as well, and I think health clubs are a fine example because they definitely have their issues. I always give the example of you know, a health club owner, you know, doesn't have the luxury that we have. We have a lot of luxuries in chiropractic. One of the luxuries is that you can commit a patient to 3 times a week, give him a calendar, get him to sign it, and then expect him to come 3 times. And if he doesn't come that 3rd time, expect him to make it up. Call him. You can confirm that patient. You can, you know, when he doesn't show, you call after him and get him to make it up, so on. Something like a health club doesn't have a luxury like that. You know, the person signs up for their membership, and that's the last time you see them. And if they come 3 times a week, fine. But if they don't, you know, there's none of that. So consequently, a lot of these people in the community, they have a lot more steeper hills to climb in terms of promotion. They're spending a lot of money. And you have to really consider the problems that others face in the community and want to help them with those. Not just, well, we're desubluxating your members and what have you. So there has to be a degree of reciprocity and understanding where you can make it a sort of win-win. And I really think that would just put period to the whole issue right there if everybody would just do that. And also, Dr. Randi, that's why I was sort of interested in your program, just because you're talking along those lines with what you do, and that's what I really respect about that. I hope that answers the question. I feel like I've strayed a little bit from the point.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll bring you back if you need, or I'm sure Dr. Allen will find something else to ask you. And something that I think is really interesting that you said that a lot of people forget is when you go out into the community to really not make it about you, to make it about, you know, how can I help you? What can I do to help you? You know, whether that's doing a screening or some other way that you can be of value to their business. Most people don't understand that, and they go into a meeting or a potential opportunity, and it's so self-serving that instantly people will put up walls that now, you know, you got to try and break down, and that is always swimming upstream. So if you understand from the get-go what Frank said is so on point, that you have to approach someone with the idea of, how can I help you? What are their problems that you can help solve? And I mean, he gave a great example of a local business that someone might deal with. But today, I mean, you can go online and read people's websites and all their social media pages and find out about what challenges they're having or what things they're supporting in the community. I mean, there's really no excuse not to have a little bit of a handle on, exactly how you might be able to help someone. And I'm just going to add a little caveat to that, which is something that I teach. When you go out there to talk to people, and we'll just use a health club as an example, don't just go there with an agenda and you're just kind of like spewing your stuff on them. If you ask questions that are open-ended enough to get people to engage in a conversation, and then you listen, my favorite tagline is, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk. And, you'll hear things that you would not know that create opportunities. And that's so important, because those might be opportunities for screening. It might be opportunities to directly service their employees. I mean, you never know what someone's going to say and share with you, that a challenge that they're having or something that they're creating in the community that you could be a part of, or where you could really lend your area of knowledge and expertise, if you're not listening. That's just, to me, that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make. And it's sad because they do miss a lot of things.
So well stated.
Yeah. What I want you to do is tell me, because you work with a lot of professionals, what do you think 3 things that professionals need to do to achieve greater success?
Oh boy, I have to come up with a list here. I could probably come up with with dozens. Well, I'm going to put reciprocity at the top of my list, and just for the obvious reasons why I got into before. I think it's important. You can insert any cliche you want there. What goes around comes around. You reap what you sow. Any of those cliches fit this situation. But reciprocity, definitely above and beyond, like the utmost important. As a second one, it's really the face-to-face interaction that I think really is vitally important. And that's also why I'm a huge proponent of the screening process. I was always into being able to speak face-to-face with people, and I think nothing communicates better than being able to just have a conversation with somebody. Even here in a Google Hangout, talking to somebody, doing a talk, doing a screening, but not just that, but really applying that principle, I think, to everyday life. The premise of actually going out there and about your daily life, talking to the cashier that's checking you out at the supermarket and finding out that she has some ailment or health problem or whatever, and actually taking the time out to enlighten her or talk to her, even in the minute or 2 that you have on the checkout line. Where there's the classic, you see the guy in the deli while you're ordering lunch standing next to you with a neck brace, and you go and start a conversation with him. So those types of things are of the utmost importance, and being able to develop that as a skill. But also, I think the third thing would be to not rely on that entirely as a process as well. And this sort of comes back to what you were talking about, Doc, about getting out into the community and really doing for the community and whatever. There's a public relations and an advertising and a marketing component as well. I find people who rely exclusively on the referral and screening process get drastically burned out after a while. Take it from a guy who spent the last 20 years doing screenings. I've even been burnt out, trying to provide it as an exclusive service. But that you should be able to have a wide array and a balance of different things that you're doing to get out there. So I would say reciprocity, face-to-face interaction, and then overall contribution and promotion in the community would probably be those top 3.
I think that's, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. Exactly.
All right. Here's another one for you, Frank. Are you ready?
Sure. Wow. I feel so, you have the list. I have no list, but that's totally fine. This is how I like to roll.
You know what? It's my game, and I have the ball, so, you got to play my way. You don't have much of a choice.
I'm willing to give that to you.
Wanted to jump in here?
Sure.
Yeah, I do if it's the appropriate time. I have a number of questions for Frank. So let me throw some of them out and then just get a sense of his opinion about these things because being in the marketing business myself and also being a consultant to help doctors market themselves, there's a number of challenges that I think maybe your experience can bring to the table here that will help. Number one is, and these are just issues that I think that is a problem as far as how we market ourselves in the chiropractic world. As chiropractors or as chiropractic advocates such as yourself who are out there trying to really help chiropractors increase their market share. And as you probably know, chiropractors haven't increased their market share in 50 years. We see a very small part of the population. We also, and you probably also know this, that 50% of all chiropractors probably go belly up within the first 5 years of their practice. Most people are treading water. 20% is pretty much closing their doors. But number one, what about the concept of not recognizing who your market is? In other words, it seems to be, and maybe, and this has changed on some levels, but it seems to me that the largest group, that the socioeconomic group that chiropractors attract are blue-collar workers. That's not a negative on blue-collar workers or a negative on chiropractors, but
Sure.
that seems to be their audience. And so I question that, one, are chiropractors if they're doing screenings, should they be going after a marketplace that fits their socioeconomic demographic that eventually they're going to bring into the office? That's number one. And let's do them one at a time. And this way, I have a bunch of them. If we could do them one at a time, I think it'll help.
Okay. Well, that's great. Well, thanks for that question. I'm going to have fun with this one, I think. And I can hardly wait to hear parts 2 and 3 and so on. But also, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to add to something you said, kind of a little bit of an amen point here. I had the interesting opportunity to speak to arbitrarily one day a bankruptcy attorney a number of years back, probably about 4 or 5 years back maybe, and we were just into a casual conversation. I was asking him a lot of questions. I was fascinated about what he did, and when he found out what I did, he actually told me that there was a huge surge of chiropractors filing for bankruptcy, and it was very disturbing to me. So I have to tell you, I found a lot of truth in what you just said in setting up that question. I think your main point really is about a demographic approach versus a sort of what I call a blanket marketing approach. I don't know, I might have stole that as a marketing term from somewhere, perhaps some textbook or some teacher somewhere, but what I consider blanket marketing is just trying to get everybody with the same message, and it just, any marketing guru can tell you that just doesn't work. There has to be a demographic approach.
Amen.
And in chiropractic, in chiropractic, I found that we have so many, I guess, pies that we could have our hands in that we don't really recognize, but that are right in front of our noses that we see in the practice every day. I'll give you an example. Some of the most successful talks I've gone out and have given were always my favorite talk scenario, which is a tag team. It's to do it with someone else. And I would go out and do the talks with the doctors, and I'd have the doctor just, I guess, be the talent and just deliver the technical part of the workshop. And I would do all the setup. I would do all the getting the room warmed up, getting them to fill out a form, getting them in basic communication, and then allowing the doctor to come up and give his talk, and then me taking the stage and actually doing the group close at the end and inviting people to come in with whatever special offer that we had. And one of the things that I found out in that experience was that and you don't get this when you're doing screenings, particularly when you just go out and do a mall show or even a corporate health fair, but each talk we were doing was on a specific topic, and some of the most successful talks I've ever given were on fibromyalgia, or were on trigger point therapy in your own home, or any of these specific topics, a talk on migraine headaches. You just attract in that demographic of like-minded people who all suffer from a similar symptom, and you can sort of zone in on just that as a topic, and it's so much more effective when you're able to do it that way. And it made me wonder, why do chiropractors not market demographically? It got me to thinking, why are we going out and doing a screening and saying, hi, I'm here from Smith Chiropractic, come have a screening today, when you could just go out and do, well, look around you. You see, you go to an event, you might see a cholesterol screening or a blood pressure screening. It's always a specific screening. And yeah, we're saying posture screening, but is posture really of interest to the general American public? Not really. Okay, maybe in the 1950s and 60s when your parents were cracking down on you to stand up straight or sit up straight or whatever. Just in terms of demographically, wouldn't it be great if you went out and just did a migraine headache screening or fibromyalgia screening or something like this? And so that's always been my viewpoint about it, and I've sort of really taken upon myself to start integrating that and working that into my systems and methods over the years, which are ever evolving, and really looking at how we can make it more like that, because I think I think your question is the answer. Demographically really has to be, the approach.
Yeah, Dr. Allen, you still there? We lose you because I was.
I am. The dogs were actually barking, and so I didn't want you guys to hear it, so I muted myself.
I just want to jump in and just kind of before you ask the text party question, tell you something very interesting. When I was in practice, I got a patient who was a Vietnam vet, and he had really bad low back problems. And the interesting thing is I started to attract, I was in a very blue-collar community in Brooklyn, New York, in a borough. I started to attract a lot of people with low back problems that happened to be Vietnam vets. And we started to really see that they all, for whatever reason, have a lot of low back issues. And I actually did a talk once in a huge hall, and it was targeted at Vietnam veterans with low back pain. I had 200 people in the room. Now, they weren't all Vietnam vets. Some of them were family members that came with them, but that's exactly what you're talking about. Now, I always had this kind of insight to recognize that there was a need for this, and I think that's where a lot of chiropractors and other kinds of providers really miss the boat, because they go to some kind of conference and someone tells them, oh, here's a great way to go out and do this, but they don't understand that that might not be appropriate for their backyard. And
Absolutely.
So I think that that's a really great point to understand and be able to recognize and be open-minded to understand what is in your community and what can you tap into. And I also think, again, that keeps coming back to relationships. When you build relationship, like I built a relationship with this particular patient who said to me, I have a lot of buddies in town and we all get together, we all serve together and we all have this same problem. So we reached out to them. For some of them we were the solution, not for all, but I think that's really important, and I'm going to let Dr. Allen ask part 2 of his question here.
Yeah, it's really funny. I have a couple of dogs that I rescued that are always with me, and my telephone line got struck by lightning. So what happened was, it's an underground line, and so they ran a temporary line across the property, which they always seem to come when I'm doing a live event to bury the wire. So as soon as they pull up, the dogs go crazy. So I want to tell a quick story about what you said, Frank, and then I'll follow up with another question. About
Sure.
7 or 8 years ago, I invented an exercise device, which I wound up raising about $5 million through an angel investor, had my own TV commercial, all that nonsense. You can hear the dogs in the background, of course. And ultimately, we needed the pre and post. In other words, we ran a newspaper ad asking people, would you like to participate in an exercise trial? You wouldn't cost you anything. You could have a potential of being on TV, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so 150 people showed up for the screening. They had to fill out a case history. I'm making a point here, believe it or not. And anyway, what happened was, we asked them everything we could ask. Their weight, their height, blood pressure, are they taking any medications? Well, the average person was taking about 7 medications. They were mostly overweight. They all had cholesterol problems, blood sugar problems, and all these other problems that were, pretty standard, quote unquote, what is really, the average American or a good part of the average American. And the last question we asked on the questionnaire, besides we examined them, was, do you consider yourself healthy? And of 150 people, every single person wrote down, yes, I consider myself healthy, because they've been programmed to believe if I'm taking a drug for cholesterol, then I'm healthy.
It's
If I'm taking, right? You following me?
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
now the question becomes, I know as chiropractors we want everyone to understand that if you remove nerve interference and increase the functionality of your body, you're going to live a long and healthy life. That's the premise. Now the question is that a marketing vehicle? If the population already believes, regardless of how unhealthy, overweight, and how many drugs they're taking, if they all believe, but I'm healthy because I'm taking that magic pill, does it make any sense to market yourself in the health and wellness arena when most people are more motivated by a symptomatic approach to going to see a doctor?
Wow.
That's right. That's right.
That's $1 million question. Go ahead, Frank.
First of all, I'm a little overwhelmed. I felt like it was more of a seminar than a question there, Doc.
Well, when you get to know Dr. Allen, that's the way it rolls.
And that's not being critical, actually. It's a compliment. It's very interesting to me, the last question on the survey and like the whole main point of that. I actually have a guest I had on my show, a gentleman named David Sanders, who's a specialist in survey. And I did an episode of the podcast. I think it's called The Patient in Question. And one of the interesting things is that, you really don't know what you're up against until you ask. And it's such an interesting point to be able to find out something like that, because one of the things that I've come to discover, much like you did, I guess sort of by accident, was that, I wonder if we're considering the things we're talking about in the same exact way. And, wondering what the person is thinking, or let me back up. Going from thinking you know what the person is thinking, which is the exact picture you have in your head, you think is in their head, when it's something completely different. And I think you make an interesting point about the how they've been indoctrinated all their life, and what they think healthy is, or even what they think good posture is, or what they think, the classic thing is, everybody gets headaches and whatever, normal versus common, and that kind of thing, that things have become so common and such the norm that you really have to go in and just really understand the person from inside their head and from what motivates them. So, and that's a great point too, because when you sit down with somebody, and this, Dr. Randi, I think you'd like this too, because it even applies when you're going out into the community and trying to get somebody or trying to work with somebody to, spread the message of chiropractic. Maybe you want to do a screening with somebody or what have you, and and when I said the concept of reciprocity, you could say, well, I'm being reciprocal with somebody because I'm offering them, I'm making their clients or their members, wellness models, and we're getting them extremely well, but is that really valuable to the person that you're talking to? And the answer oftentimes is just no. And so you really need to know what is valuable. I'm not sure if I've strayed from the point here. I'm trying to get back on point with the question, and I'm wondering if you can help me do that, or if I've answered it, or.
No, I think that you took my long-winded point and narrowed it down in really one sentence, and that really is that don't assume that you know where that person's coming from or their mindset is, because ultimately, if you believe that, then it becomes your marketing once again is about you. It's not about them. Yes. Because you're making, people do that with politics. They assume everyone has the same political view. People do that with religion. They think everyone has the same religious view. And unfortunately, people do that in marketing, especially in our profession, because they make an assumption that everyone is coming from the same place. In light of the fact that, unfortunately, it's not worked for us as a profession. We literally are not effective marketers. It's sort of like if you go to, and I know this is very popular now, and I know people are going to probably be upset that I say this, but it's like there are people now who sell things to chiropractors for their social media marketing that are very appealing to the chiropractor, and everyone on Facebook that is giving each other chiropractic. Here's the high five, man. We talked about subluxation. Let's do the high five. But for the people that you're trying to do this to get their attention, they don't know what you're talking about. They don't know what that means. And it's easy to sell things to chiropractors if chiropractors identify with them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the marketplace, which is who we really need to reach, is identifying with it.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And I think, and you know, I hate to say this, I think websites are one of the biggest guilty things. You know, you see this flashy looking website that looks amazing. It has a lot of information that you really want people to know on it, yet is it something that is ripe and ready for somebody who just doesn't know anything about anything to be able to take in and read and accept? And the answer is no. And I think, Doc, you just answered the question as to why did I screen 30 and only get 5 or 10? And the reason is not because you're only 1/3 as good. The reason is because 2/3 of the people weren't ready to, within 5 minutes, change to a state where they're ready to take the next step.
And that's, you know, I think also in what, to confirm even what Dr. Allen was just saying a minute ago, and I agree with you. I think we think that everyone thinks like us. You know, we've been, for lack of a better term, indoctrinated into this thought process for however many years you're in practice or an advocate for the profession. But, you know, you think back to all the people that do not have, you know, any exposure to this. They're not raised in a healthy environment. They're raised in a more conventional, you know, medical environment. And they're not going to understand why their nervous system is important. And unfortunately, and people don't want to hear this, and I have this battle all the time, nor do they care. And that's a tough pill to swallow. And there's a lot of people that won't care. And like Dr. Allen said, I think the perfect thing is that people don't think that they're unhealthy. You know, they think that taking a couple of medications and being 20 or 25 pounds overweight and, you know, eating fast food for breakfast, you know, they're still walking, talking, and breathing, and, you know, to them they're all good. So I think it's definitely an uphill battle. And I'd like to ask you one last question as we start to run out of time here. If you had to kind of put your finger on, you know, understanding the challenges that as healthcare providers we face today, and it's definitely a continuing uphill battle as the healthcare environment itself continues to change. What do you think are the first action steps that health providers should be taking to really, you know, elevate their success for their business and their presence in the community?
Well, Doc, I can think of 3 things right off the top of my head. I would say volume, consistency, and persistence. Just right off the bat, I mean, that's what came to mind as you were talking. Because, well, let me give it to you this way. No matter what, you know, when you talk about the uphill climb, it might be, okay, well, insurance regulations are changing yet again, or Obamacare, or this or that or the other thing, and they're always going to be trying to cut you off somewhere. When you just get ramped up again, it's like you get cut off at the knees and you're saying, oh, my payments are getting cut in half and what have you. So my philosophy has always been and always will be, you have to make up for in volume what you're lacking in quality, or at least as a first action, which is how I always start with people when I coach with them. The first thing we do is we teach them to work in abundance, because you know, if you get out there and you're meeting an abundance, if you're meeting volumes of people, then, you know, even if you're 50% or 40% or 10%, then just by the sheer volume of it, you can have the numbers of somebody who's a much higher you know, ratio or rate of close type of person. So there's that. Consistency includes frequency. One of the things I found, I always give this example in my coaching calls, that if you had 2 parallel universes and you had 2 identical chiropractors in those parallel universes, they went to the same screenings and met the same sort of the same had the opportunity to meet the same people or whatever, and Dr. A did 52 screenings, and he did them all over the summer from June through August, and Dr. B in the other parallel universe did a bunch of screenings, and he did 1 a week for the entire year. When all is said and done, after a year, if you look back, the numbers of chiropractor B are always better, no matter what the circumstances are, and there's something to be said about consistency, frequency, set intervals. that I found, and that is another big thing. And then persistence on top of it. There is an amazing amount of impatience that goes on in practice growth type marketing, in that you just want it to work right away. And hey, I get it. I don't blame you. I want it to work right away when I have to promote and whatever. You put some effort out and you want to see results right away. You get a chiropractor who says, I tried mailings and didn't work. Okay, what did you do? Well, I did a mailing and we mailed this postcard and whatever, and we got nobody off it. Okay, how many times did you mail? Well, we did it the one time. So. And it's not always that ridiculous. You could have been hacking away at this for 2 years, and the point is that if you feel like it's not working, then you're probably almost there. And that's a key, that don't give up now. Persist a little longer, and it'll probably break wide open. And it always does. In fact, that's one of my biggest, my favorite podcast shows I've ever done was called When Nothing Seems to Work, ... And I really mean the ... because it was all about that. You're banging your head against the wall. You're doing everything you can. You're meeting as many people as you can. You're doing as many screenings, advertising, whatever, and you're thinking, wow, it's not working. And all I'm saying is the effort and persistence that it takes is far beyond your wildest dreams. And if you can hang in there and do that and keep your consistency in, and do all these other things, then you're going to win every time.
And I think that is a perfect place to tie this up, and that is 1,000% true. And I think anyone that's very successful, in business, I mean, Colonel Sanders is the most famous story. If he would have stopped at the first 100 no's or something like that,
yeah,
there'd be no Kentucky Fried Chicken. There's another famous story about some oil tycoon that someone drilled land for years, nothing, sold it for like pennies to someone else. They went 3 feet over, and they became one of the biggest oil barons that our country has ever known. The names escape me at the moment, but that's so true. It's always when you give up that it's over. Well, I want to thank Frank for being here with us today. Dr. Allen, if you could just put his slide up, or if you're going to put it up at the end, where people can go and download Frank's ebook. While I close us out, we'll go ahead and put that on the screen. You can go to screeningexperts.com, and you'll see on the right-hand side of the page that you can get a download of Frank's book. I want to thank Frank for taking time out of his busy schedule to be here with us today. And
my pleasure.
Dr. Allen and I look forward to continuing the relationship and helping each other serve those that we serve, to make this profession much more viable and give people the tools they need to continue to be successful. I'm just going to sign off here and turn it over to Dr. Allen. I want to thank everyone for being here. We will see you back here next week. And Dr. Allen, it's all yours to close us out.
Well, you've been listening to another episode of Building Your Wellness Brand Within Your Community. Today's episode brought to you by Epic Consulting, making sure your electronic presence is all it needs to be. Community Wellness Day, every great opportunity begins with the first step. Take that step with Community Wellness Day. And the System, the official marketing program for healthcare professionals everywhere. And the VIP app, the only application that allows you to bring your live hangouts, just like this one, to the iPhone, iPad, the Samsung Galaxies, and your desktop. On behalf of myself, Dr. Alan Weinstein, and my co-host, Dr. Randi Ross, we'll look forward to seeing you again next week.
Bye, everyone.